Good afternoon. This is Neil, Simpler Trading and Simpler Futures. If you can hear me okay, we start with a mic check and a screen check. If so, we will get started. Should see a 8-grid layout of some various futures tickers or symbols. And the purpose of today, I was asked to stop in the Simpler Trading's training/essentials trade room and go through my preferred and most used trading platforms, as well as a few of my charts with explanation of the of both actually and why. And so let's start with that. What you're looking at on screen now is the Thinkorswim trading application or platform. And you can find that by going to tdameritrade.com. I'll show you on screen what that looks like. So if you had interest in either utilizing, trading, charting with, etc., this particular platform, you can find them by going to tdameritrade.com. I'm not suggesting that you do that. I was asked to show you the trading platforms that I use and talk to you a little bit about them and why. Here you can download the platform. You could open a new account if you wanted to, but you can simply open and download the platform and not even open an account and use it just for the purpose of navigating and looking around and learning a little bit about the platform. The other trading platform that we're going to look at today that I use is a personal preference, but I'll explain to you the why and how and what and everything, and that's TradeStation. Now, I use this one mostly for futures trading and Thinkorswim for options. But you can find TradeStation, the TradeStation platform, at tradestation.com. And I've probably had this platform for near 20 years now, right at probably 20 years. Actually, probably maybe for both. But this one was the very first, because I very first was interested in currencies and futures. And the ease of trade and transaction on the TradeStation platform, I think, is just superior for a couple of reasons. One, their commission structure is better than anybody else that I know of or have used, and especially Thinkorswim. And the charting is, in my opinion, superior. The ease of execution is superior. The speed of fills and transaction is superior. The margin requirements are definitely, absolutely superior by many times. And that's good enough, actually, for me. I mean, and lastly, I'll tell you, the statements are really easy to read. They're just really straightforward, clear, concise, and just, I mean, straightforward, top down. Just here's where you started, here's what you made or lost, and here's your ending balance. I mean, it's really straightforward. All right. So let's look and see what each of these looks like, and talk a little bit about why. So what you're looking at here on screen, this is for charting purposes. These are some Thinkorswim charts to start. And I've just got, it's very simple, very straightforward layout. I'll show you. Very few indicators on here, but I'll show you what they are. The green lines here are the open range, the open swing. I'm going to strip this chart down to bare and rebuild it and show you how and what that is. But essentially, that's the range of high-low on the open that allowed the opportunity for the market on opens to make their way into the marketplace on the bell. The moving average line on here is not that. The lighter color, that's the volume weighted average price, the VWAP. And the darker royal kind of blue is the session midpoint, which is the high and low added divided by 2 equals the mid, right? So straightforward. And then I choose to run, you don't have to, but I choose to run these trend candles on here, and they're a version that that I've created that I like. Basically, as long as it's trending up, in that color, white is neutral, trending down is in the red. And I'll show you why and what they're doing, but they're based on a very tight Bollinger Band settings is what they're based on. And then the other things that we have on here are these points at which we anticipate targets / price to reflect, like this blue line down here. I can make it whatever color I want, but those are pivot points. So I've got a pivot in red, always in red. You can see down here on the bottom. My pivot's in red, always red. The S1, R1, S2, R2, daily S1, S2, R1, R2, et cetera, are going to be these levels, right? So I can anticipate if below pivot, then, headed to S1, if above pivot, headed to R1, and so on and so forth. Really straightforward. Not a lot to it. I keep it really simple. And that way it's easy to to navigate, not get over analytical with and end up causing paralysis by analysis or something. So, but now, as I mentioned, even though I'm charting over here this futures contract on TOS, I'm actually going to go do the execution by choice. I'm going to go do the execution on TradeStation platform. Reasons: margin requirements are much lower, commission structure is much better, and that's enough reason in and of itself. But additionally, the ease of execution is superior, in my opinion. The reporting of the fill is much faster. The fill is actually faster. The reporting on the fill is much faster, and just so on and so forth. Now, I do options trading on the Thinkorswim platform. It is far superior for that to TradeStation, in my opinion. So my options trading goes on the Thinkorswim platform. I'm not telling you what to do. I was asked to tell you what I do and why. And so that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm going down the list. It said, brief overview of your charts and the indicators, the platforms, tell which platforms you use and why. That's what I'm doing. I'm not suggesting that because I trade futures on TradeStation that you do. In fact, I'll give you a list of some others. If you wanted to go to NinjaTrader or AMP Futures or Infinity Futures or Gain Capital or TradingView with there's just a number, right, of different platforms that you can research and decide, what works for you. But I will tell you this, as I go to now this next platform, just real quick, just for a half a second here. This is TradeStation. I love the charts. And now they're not as easy to build. It's not as easy to build a chart on here as it is on the Thinkorswim platform. It's not as easy to share a chart as it is on the Thinkorswim platform. But once I take the time to do one or both, then build it and share it, because a lot of folks ask for they want me to build a template and then email them the template, which I do quite frequently, all the time actually. But once you do, I think I like these charts a lot, right? Now, here's what their order execution dome looks like. The DOM, depth of market, or in TradeStation name or language, they call it a matrix. But to me, it's an order platform, right? All I do is I come over here and I find a spot over here on the left to buy or a spot over here on the right to sell. And I just go click And you know, like I'll just do real quick and I'm going to cancel it, but boom, click, and boom, it placed an order to sell at the place where I clicked the button, and now I'm going to cancel it because I don't really want to sell one because I'm long and the market's moving higher. So I would just let that, you know, continue to go. But this is what the TradeStation platform looks like. Now, it's not as easy, in my opinion, to trade options on this platform. It's much easier to build an option strategy and order and execution on the Thinkorswim platform and for options, which is why I do the options trading there. But this is a look at, and let me go through some other, you know, screens just to show you real quick what I'm talking about. Like here is another chart with pivot points for the S&Ps that are laid out in advance for me with daily, weekly, and monthly pivot points. Not only the pivot, but the S1, R1, S2, R2, midpoints, you name it, everything is laid out for me on a, because I've built it this way, daily, weekly, and monthly pivot points for every ticker that I want to know this information for. You know, you can see I've got it readily available here for S&P, Dow, Russell, NASDAQ, bonds, gold, crude, etc. And I could do it for anything else that, you know, that we want to maybe look at as well. I keep a another grid here with daily charts so that I can just click over here real quick and see, is anything catch my attention, catch my eye, you know. The one thing that catches my eye is copper is a little soft today, which is telling me to beware of this uptick in the equity space. But for now, equities are moving higher, so you know, you ride the wave. But here's just an example of, you know, some daily charts on the TradeStation platform. Really, main point here being that I like the charts a lot. Intraday chart and an indicator that we're going to go into today here of the S&P. And on this chart is the yellow lines. That's called the initial balance. And you can see that the initial balance extension caught the low here in the S&P so far today. Quite nice. Obviously, in seeing that, it might be a little easier to show you why I think that's important. But let's move on. And so now that we've gone through and looked at, you know what? Before we do, let me show you Thinkorswim's version that I've got. That's easy to share. Of the initial balance. Here's what it looks like. You can see the same thing down here. The extension, the blue line, caught the low here in the S&Ps today. Where does it go? All the way back to the top, to that double top from earlier, and extended that weak, poor high from earlier. I will admit, not before breaking down, obviously, first. That double top was in before it broke down, but point here being a couple. One, the observation of the double top having come down to the IB extension. I mean, really, really well. Holding back all the way to the top, right? So that's called the initial balance. And we're going to talk about that when I'll show you that and how to build it, you know, from scratch as well. So, all right, let's get started here. Let's get started this way. I'm going to hit studies, and we're going to remove all studies so that we're starting from scratch. I'm doing that because I was asked to show the chart, talk about the indicators, strip it down, rebuild it to show how easy it can be to build one of these, and talk about the importance of each of these indicators. Okay, so let's go to work. Here we're going to put the pivot points on here. This is an indicator that Simpler Trading's Eric Purdy, who's a genius coder in the Thinkorswim's coding language. I mean, he really does remarkable work. He built this for me because I was complaining one day about the fact that I could not find a pivot points indicator on the TOS platform that I liked, that I could trust. He says, well, what do you mean, by that exactly? I said, well, pretty simply, how about one that would give us the correct pivot and the correct S1, R1, S2, R2s? And he said, well, I'll tell you what, how about give me just a minute and I'll get that done for you and shoot it to you and see what you think. So in just a couple of minutes, here's what I got back. And I thought this was just really, really, really nice. You can see the red line here that I've labeled as pivot because mine is always color coded like that. I always leave my stuff color coded. Let me see one second. R1, R2, R3. Forgot to change the color on that one. All right, now, so red for me equals pivot. Okay, blue is going to equal target and probably a fade / pivotal price, but red is pivot, and then these blue lines are going to be the targets. All right. Pretty straightforward. I mean, you got a daily pivot and an R1, an R2, S1, S2, right? I told you that was on there, and that would be one of the things that we would, put back on. Then, if you recall, we had the open swing. Now I'm going to go manipulate the colors on this so that we keep it consistent with what you saw when we opened the chart. Just keeping it consistent is all. You can see I have the opportunity to define by time right there what I think the open swing is. It could be 3 minutes or 5. Frankly, I used to use 3 in the past. Now I use 5. And then we had the midpoint, which is simply the high and the low added divided by 2, right? I probably need to check the color. Yeah, I don't want to plot that. Low, don't want to plot that. Mid, that's what we're after. I'm going to put it in that royal blue that we had before. And let's see, we had VWAP. And I'm going to use, I just want a basic VWAP. I've got several that I can anchor. And I use those, I do, but I don't want to use that for right now. I'm just going to keep it simple for right now. I'll just use this one. Let me just use a straightforward, basic VWAP with no bands. You can see I've got bands. I can choose not to show those. And it was in that cyan color. And then I mentioned to you that I've got my trend candles on there. I like them, but you could use, we've got some different trend candles that you can use. One of that's really good that I should probably actually put on here for you and show you is our 10X. This is a really good trend candle. I'll just put that one on there. You can see that it includes some special sauce here. It's got a little dot that'll come populate on the candle when the volume is excessive on that particular candle, and it does the same thing in terms of trend, right? Green, red. green up, red, yellow neutral, green up, red down, yellow neutral, etc. Right? Okay, so that is the first chart that I showed you that had the pivot points, the open range, the midpoint, and the VWAP, along with a trend candle that I've chosen to include. Like I said, you don't have to, but I chose to put that on there. And the one that I put on here for you is one that we offer at Simpler, and it's called the 10X. And it's not only a trend candle, but it also includes the ability to see when the volume on that particular candle relative, that one in time relative to that candle in that same time other days, is showing excessive volume, which is basically a way to say it's showing higher than normal relative volume. Okay, that's what the pivot points chart would look like. We'll go back to studies. Now I can remove all studies, back to just a naked chart, and we're going to show how to build now the initial balance chart, which is as simple as adding an indicator that, by the way, everybody at Simpler in any and all of the trade rooms is welcome to. All you have to do is come and join us in either the futures or the options room and say, hey, give me that initial balance chart, and I'll be happy to do that. What you see here is I can play with the colors like I did before. I could make this, the inputs for the level, I can make them different colors, etc. It's down here, the pivot mid, highest, lowest. Let's go mid, probably go yellow. Yeah. I want highest. I want yellow, lowest. We'll go yellow. And then the rest of these, I'm going to leave them alone for now. But simply, so I've changed the color so that I can make a point, and that is that the yellow, inside the yellow range, is the first hour of trade. From there, the extensions are computed mathematically. And once this thing broke, the bottom level here, it went to the first extension really well and bounced. The historical probability of its making that level is about 68%. Back tested. Now I don't know what it's going to do tomorrow, but and I don't know what it was going to do today. I know it in hindsight happened to find that level today and reflected off of it very nicely. But what I can tell you is back tested how often it found, with what frequency it found that level in the past, and it's a very good and high probability test. Let me check questions and see if I've got any kind of questions today. Nancy says, what futures overnight session is the most active? That's interesting. Nancy, that's an interesting one. So I first of all, before I go to the chart that I have in mind, I'm going to answer by saying I believe this. I believe that he or she who has the sun setting over them at the time is in control. Meaning, if you live in New York and it's 3 o'clock in the morning for you, it's about 12 noon in Europe. Or, it's in the middle of their, trading day. So is the U.S. market really in control, or is in the middle of the night while we're asleep and the European market is active? Are they really in control, and we are trading largely, our levels are going to be trading in sympathy with he who or she who has the sun sitting over them at the time is in control? So I believe that overnight, that's your question, overnight, which market is the most active? Well, I have to throw another question at you, and that would be what time overnight? Because at, say, in Chicago, at 6 p.m., 6:30 at night when, you know, Chicago is settling down for dinner, who really is active? And the answer is Asia, right? And then there's something else that happens very frequently at about 8 o'clock at night. I guess it's with the Hang Seng Open or something, but the markets pivot very nicely, very reliably. They pivot. You say which markets? I would say specifically gold and bonds, but surely the S&Ps are going to pivot in conjunction with that. So then there's another very important time of night, and it's about 2:30 at night when there's another very reliable pivot, bonds and gold and S&Ps, et cetera. But that's got to do with the European markets coming into, they're in control now. And then we get into Chicago time, we get into the 8:30 US cash market open, and it's 2 hours from, you know, Europe's winding down, right? So there's a window of time there for 2 hours, 120 minutes, where it's a coexistent sort of session with US and Europe, but it's really US, I think, that's probably dominant because it's the beginning of hours and the winding down, the handing of the ball, handing of the baton, you know, from Europe over to US or whatever. So when you say which market is active, the most active overnight, first of all, I'm going to say you have to help me a little more and say what time of night, because I'm going to say it's either going to be Asia or European dependent, depending on the time that you choose. And then depending on the time that you choose, I'm going to give you an answer which tickers, because if it's Europe, then I believe that's when the DAX is and the Euro Stoxx 50 are firmly in control. But then the ES or S&P or NASDAQ and whatever is going to trade and be active, but it's trading actually in sympathy with Europe, whatever Europe's doing, if they're bullish or bearish or whatever, right? So that said, let's switch tickers and go to, in fact, probably here, I guess. Get me here. I want to go to a gold chart, because gold is one of those tickers that I told you is real prone to pivot in the overnight session. And specifically, we're going to go to try to find a pivot at 2000 hours, which is 8 o'clock at night Chicago time, and then again at 2:30. Gold, well, whatever it was doing, it's going to change directions and go the other way. Often. I mean, we can go back and test this theory over several few sessions and see, but often, right? Here's a 2000 hours pivot in gold. See, it was going down into that, and it changed directions right at 2000 hours, and it does the same thing again at 2:30, right in here. And you can go back day after day and test this theory, but I would point to, if I were you, I would look to gold and bonds specifically at those two timestamps that I'm giving you. That's, I believe that's 8 o'clock at night Chicago and 2:30 a.m. Chicago, which is 9 and 3:30 Eastern, right? And if you find that to be, you know, helpful, I think you will, then you may consider looking at the S&Ps also. But the S&Ps, I mean, why are the S&Ps really pivoting or doing something at 2:30 in the morning Chicago time? Obviously, it's got to do with the DAX and the Euro Stoxx having done something, because that's who's really in control or active and open, if you will, at that time, right? So no real clear answer for you there, because I need more information. You say, which futures overnight session is the most active? Well, I mean, you know, at 6:30 and 7 o'clock at night, it's going to be Asia. At 2 o'clock in the morning, it's going to be Europe. And it doesn't mean that only European tickers are the ones moving or trading, you know, at their time of night, or our time of night, their time of day, but it does mean they're in control, and in my opinion. And so we would pick a product that we could trade in sympathy with the dominant feature that's actually in control at that time of day or night. Okay. Now, another point that was asked of me to look at was any special settings that I have on here. And they're really not. Maybe if I point to, like, for instance, I'll point to the volume weighted average price, the VWAP. You can see it's not anchored. I can anchor it. If you wanted to anchor it, I would anchor it to that 2 a.m. DAX print and maybe a 6 a.m. also right here. You could anchor it to that. You can see clearly it starts from the very beginning, 1700 hours on the Globex Open of Sunday night, and it's running continuous throughout, so it's not anchored, so there's no special setting for that. I'm telling you, if you wanted a special setting, anchor it to something of importance. Like, for instance, how about Europe? Anchor it to Europe if you want to anchor it to something. The midpoint in the royal blue, you can see that's not really a special setting. It's running on full session. It starts at the very beginning, and it's indicative of a high-low divided by 2, and it's the session mid throughout. If you wanted a special setting for that, then I would offer your special setting could be run it on RTH hours only, meaning from the cash market open to the cash market close of today. That way you have a fixed RTH mid and VWAP in addition to your full session mid VWAP. You could have both. Actually, if you want to know on other monitors, I do. I've got on other monitors, I've got not only a full session, but an RTH mid VWAP. I want a reference, you know. If you need a reason for why a reference, I would say that oftentimes the ending session mid VWAP of a day is a target the next day. Like, for instance, wherever Friday's, RTH, this is not RTH, okay? You're not seeing Friday's RTH, but wherever Friday's ending RTH mid VWAP left off, that would be a target today. That'd be a reason for that. As far as settings, we mentioned that I choose to populate the open swing here at 5 minutes. You could arguably experiment with this down on a 3-minute basis. It's arguably quite effective at 3 minutes as well. I use 5. I've used 3. I did probably back in about 15 years ago. I think I was on a 3-minute. The market was different 15 years ago. I mean, we had 10-point initial balance, 10-point 60-minute, 10-point wide S&P range over 60 minutes that extended to maybe 15 points average on a full day, right? So it was a different market then. Example, look, 5 minutes wide this morning, 5 minutes was 10 points wide this morning in the S&P, right? So it's a different market. So I use different settings now than I did, whatever, 15 years ago or something. Colors was another highlight that I was asked to kind of really point out. Colors. Consider this, even if you don't necessarily subscribe to my color scheme, and I'm not encouraging you to subscribe to my color scheme, not at all. In fact, some people are color blind as an absolute matter of fact, right? But I would say, could you consider this at least? Keep it consistent with something that when you see something on a chart, you don't have to wonder, what is that? I wonder what that is. Why'd I do that? I wonder what that line means. If you choose something that just you can resonate with, for instance, purple maybe means prior. I do. That's what I do, right? Purple is prior. That means you see that purple line right here on the chart? I don't have to wonder what that means. I know exactly what that means as soon as I see it, because purple means prior. And that is an old end of quarter settle print at 44.09. Okay, that's a very important price. I know if I see red, it's pivot. If it's not labeled, then it's daily pivot like this one. But if it's labeled, I've labeled it. So I know that means weekly pivot, right? But red, either way, is pivot. Purple is prior. The lighter color blue is VWAP and the darker one's mid. Maybe, you know, you choose something for the open. Me, white. White is open. Yellow is initial balance. I just know this. I know that I'm not encouraging you to necessarily subscribe to my color scheme. I don't care what, you know, what your charts look like. I would just say make it easy on yourself. And that is, if you use something that's consistent, then it makes sense and you can resonate with immediately. You know, you see red and it's like, I don't wonder what that is. That's pivot. That helps. I'm saying, I think that helps. Nancy says, are you using Eastern Asia or Europe? Okay. Well, when I talk, I tend to talk in Central Chicago time, but I also try to label exactly what I'm saying with exactly the orientation, i.e., you know, geographically, what is it, right? So I said, when I say, you know, 8 o'clock pivot, right? I said, that's Chicago, 8 o'clock Chicago time. That's Central. 8 o'clock Chicago time is that pivotal timestamp I showed you on gold and bonds, because gold does what bonds do and bonds do what gold does. And Europe, like the euro does what gold does, what bonds do. As goes, Europe's going to go, gold is going to go bonds. It's going to go inverse dollar, which means it's largely going to go directionally with the equity complex. But that's another story. So answer to your question, when I said 8 o'clock at night, that's Chicago. 2:30 a.m. in the middle of the night when everybody's asleep and I'm studying the back of my eyelids, that's Chicago time. But I also was trying to be, you know, sensitive to the fact that, you know, a lot of people speak market language in Eastern, and that's understandable. That's why I say 8 Chicago, 9 New York. 2,000 hours on my chart is 8 o'clock at night in Chicago, which is 9 o'clock at night in New York. So I tend to speak in general in Central time because the Chicago Exchange for futures markets is in Central time, is why. But understand that a lot of people speak market language in Eastern, so I try to kind of quote both. But that's it. That's what. So, real quick before I go, is there anything else? And okay, wait. I'm sorry. I told you I would explain my color candles here, and I didn't do that yet. So let me do that just real quick. Take a half a second. These are my trend bars the way I like them. Like I said, I showed you also the 10x candles that show the volume thing on it, you know, as well. But this one is a little different. Let me show you. So let's see, Neil, where's the Neil trend bars? All right, what we're going to do is I'm going to turn on the lines that, in my opinion, just get in the way. You don't need to see them. I'll show you why you don't need to see them in just a minute. But now you see all these lines, way too many lines on the chart, but now you see the lines, right? That's Bollinger Bands that are set, as you can see here, on a 20-period look back, but set from a standard Bollinger Band setting of 2.5 deviations, drawn in tenfold to 0.25 deviations. So from 2.5 down 10 times to 0.25 deviations. So a 20-period look back. So that means, and notice anytime the candles are on top of the Bollinger Bands, they're in that buy side color. When price here got in the middle of the bands, it turned white neutral. And when price is now below those Bollinger Bands, it's red. Now, I like that. I think that the white neutral makes sense to me because, well, because that's the way I like them. But I mean, because it gives you a heads up. Hey, we may be turning here. You know, all these pretty blue candles that were blue, now we're going white neutral. We're telling you that the very next thing you may see is indeed maybe red. So heads up, right? Now, a lot of trend candles like Heiken Ashi are just going to be buy or sell. Is the price higher or lower than the average price of the preceding 6 candles? If it's higher, it's blue or green or whatever. And if it's lower, it's red, period. That's it. It goes from buy to sell and back and that's it. There's no neutral. This one gives you a neutral. That's why I use those candles. But I don't need to see those lines because I know where the lines are based on the color of the candle. So therefore, I turn the lines off and I just use the candles as trend candles. That was the last explanation I think I owed you. So almost exclusively, really exclusively actually, I'll do options trades on the Thinkorswim platform because it is 1, 2, 3 click, and I just love how easy it is. I mean, I can set up butterflies, iron condors, ironflies, strangles, straddles. I mean, you name it, balanced and broken wing and all, just any kind of option strategy you can think of, just 1, 2, 3 click on the Thinkorswim platform. However, I really don't feel the same way about them for futures trading. I just don't. So if you have the ability to have funds here and there, then I can encourage you for a couple of reasons. One, their commission structure is higher. Two, their margin requirements are astronomically higher, not even in the same league, maybe not the same sport. And the fills are faster elsewhere. It's just 100 reasons why I think futures can be more easily, simply, cheaper, etc., traded elsewhere. But I mean, for building options strategies, I got to tell you, and they don't mind me saying this, trust me, because they're after your options business anyway. I probably care less I don't think they care if you transact futures on their platform, whatever. They certainly don't try to service it like they're trying to entice anybody to, for that business. But yeah, the options trading is hands down on the Thinkorswim platform, and futures, I would do it almost anywhere else. Volume, yeah, that's okay. So here's another question that I didn't get to yet. So yes. So first of all, here is the chart. Here is the share link to make it even easier. MP. And what is on this chart and how are we using it, etc. Okay, so now we're going to go to any ticker, doesn't matter, but we'll go to S&Ps or something. And we'll look at what's on this chart. What's on this chart is actually two different profiles. Volume, both are volume, but two different profiles. One you'll see here is for each individual day, and another you can see here is a cumulative building profile. It's building cumulative over the course of a week, right? So you have a daily and a weekly profile all in the same chart. So what that looks like on the chart is that tan color in the background is last week, all of last week. Each one of these little blue profiles is each individual day. And then, of course, it's starting over here on the hard right edge of the screen with tan will be blue tomorrow because this is starting today. It's building a weekly profile starting on the hard right edge for this week, right? So each individual day gets its own point of control. You see by the magenta, and its own value area high and low in green. Simultaneously, you're also getting and building a point of control for the week in red, brick red, that dark brick red, with a value area high and low in this baby blue, cyan blue. So I know that, for instance, very interestingly, today, the low of today was last week's weekly value area high. Had it gone any lower today, I certainly would have been anticipating, in fact, at one point I was, that it would trade down to 14 or 15, which was last week's weekly point of control and was last session's daily point of control. So what that means is, since I'm choosing to look at this in volume terms, it means that that's where the most volume was transacted. Had I put this on a market profile, then that would mean that that's where the market spent the most time trading on a TPO, time price opportunity, with a series of letters ABC throughout on 30-minute brackets. You'd be looking at, well, that's where the market spent the most time trading. Now, you could argue that doesn't it make sense that a lot of times, yes, not always, but a lot of times your TPO point of control is going to be really close to where your volume point of control is? I would say, yeah, because if it spent the most time there, chances are it had the opportunity at least to trade the most volume there, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that. Oftentimes, you'll see something, for instance, like last week, I noticed a TPO point of control at like 09 with a volume at 14. So they were 5 points apart. Not any big deal, but I can tell you this, it spent the most time at 09, the most volume transacted at 14. I can tell you that, right? What you're looking at here is volume. This is absent time. Time isn't relative here. In fact, irrelevant. In fact, you can see that I've chosen to populate this on a tick chart, right? A 1600 tick chart. Time is irrelevant on this chart. This is that histogram strictly represents one thing. The more elongated the histogram is from left to right, the more volume transacted at that price. It creates a volume point of control and value area. You look at singles, and can they be seen here? Yes and no. So singles, yeah, but you're not going to see them on a volume chart represented exactly the same FT, exactly the same as they are on a market profile chart. A market profile is going to show singles in the form of one letter, like an A, an overlapped B, but it skipped an area here right at this price because price was moving so fast that it didn't create an AB or an ABC sequence on the on this particular range of price that may be 2 or 3 points wide or something like that. But you're going to see it not exactly the same, okay? But you're going to see it in this histogram in the way of what I would then call on this histogram a low volume LV in, or for node, or area, LVA for area, in for node, whatever you want to call it. But you can see here that price skipped very quickly through that area right there, at which point I would go check a market profile for singles, potential singles at that area, at that level. So I understand what you're asking, but I'm telling you that you're going to see it differently on a volume than it's going to be represented differently on a volume than it's going to be on a TPO market profile, because on market profile it's going to be represented with a single letter, versus on the volume it's going to be an LVN, I guess we'll call it, or A for area or price, or LV, whatever you want to call it, low volume. And the reason is because prices just skipped through that as it's moving rather rapidly, which is another point that you kind of raised without maybe mentioning exactly. And that is kind of the nature of the profile itself too. You can see that blue, how it's all over the place. I mean, to be honest with you, it's like, holy cow. I mean, if you took price off of that and you didn't know that it started at the top and ended at the bottom, maybe it started at the bottom and ended at the top. Either way, you can see that thing was in quite the mood on, what day was that? Thursday. I mean, obviously it tried everything everywhere up and down the ladder. It tried, let's see, it tried 65, 56, 40, and you could even argue right there at about 30, 20, 09s, 93 fours, 85s. I mean, it tried all up and down the ladder to find some consensus, like, can we come together as buyers and sellers? Can we come together here? And the answer was nope, 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 and nope. And we just kept trying. Well, what about this? Nope. What about this? Nope. What about this? Nope. How about this? What about this? Nope. We got two real important prices here today, obviously 44.40 and 30. That's in today's profile. Let's see. But What is this question? Do you trade FX? Bob C. Not anymore. And why? Man, it's a long story. I tell you what, I'll end the recording on the shared broadcast thing that's going out over the web. I think it's going to like YouTube or something, and I stick around and tell you a story if you want about that, but it's quite a story. Okay, I think we're largely done for today. You can see the pivot points chart that I use, the initial balance, and this volume, and that pretty much is enough, honestly. I mean, you don't need a lot more. Or maybe you do. I don't know. I don't think so. I think, we can keep it relatively simple and just, and by the way, you probably don't need all the stuff that I'm even looking at. I tend to think that, I like to know where the initial balance levels are. I mean, we quoted that level this morning in the futures room as, a target if bearish because of its being an IB extension. Had no idea, of course, at the time it would hold and be the low. Absolutely anticipate those extensions as being targets and pivots, but to be the low, no, maybe not. It happens to be. If that's all we had to work with, I think we could probably learn to work with just that. It would take more patience because it's a higher time frame chart. Then, if you wanted, intraday, like day time frame levels, like, ooh, this level, that level, what's the pivot, what's the mid, what's the VWAP, what's the this, what's the that. We've got the, the 8 grid layout for that. And then to start with the whole thing, to make a plan for the day from, where are you going to begin this day and come up with here's my line in the sand, like a bookie. I'm taking the over under. You want the points? What do you want? Over under. This is my line in the sand. Lean long above, short below. From there, where are our likely target objectives if bullish, and where would they be if bearish? And whichever way price decides to go today, then we'll try to identify that as quickly as possible, get on board, ride the wave toward those targets. That all starts, in my opinion, from the higher time frame charts. And I think we can do that from these profile charts from a higher time frame. That's what I got for you. Hope it helps, and enjoyed being with you. Thanks for having me. We'll do it again next time. I'm looking for the end button on this software. I can't seem to find the end stream. There we go.